This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Stay tuned to save 10% or more on your purchase and learn more about building your website. When I said that Generation 5 is the peak of the franchise, I meant it in earnest. Black 2 and White 2 are sequels just as deserving of the moniker. There's a lot of discussion surrounding which game is better, which is understandable. Our culture is built on relativity and ranking. I technically have my preference, but having that discussion here might be missing the forest for the trees. The fact that Black 2 and White 2 stand on their own enough to warrant such a debate is impressive in and of itself, and I choose to simply see it as the generation's second half. Consider this a part 2 of 2. Let's jump back into Unova.
In Pokémon Black 2 and Pokémon White 2, there are new powers to unleash and new challenges to overcome. The new Pokémon Black version 2 and Pokémon White version 2. You can discover the new in 2. Playable on Nintendo DS and 3DS systems, rated E for everyone.
2 years is a long time. Inevitably, things change. You visit many of the same cities, fight many of the same gym leaders, and catch many of the same Pokémon. However, you start in a new set of cities and routes on the opposite side of the region. It's a second adventure, a distinct one. You have a new rival, Hugh, set to take the journey with you, ushered into the journey by the two previous rivals. It's interesting to see what 2 years has done for these characters. Sharon's a gym leader, still a beacon of resilience, but he's the first gym leader. His role isn't necessarily about power, it's about being the gatekeeper for prospective trainers. It's about being there to guide them through their first steps into the Pokémon world, no doubt inspired by what Alder did for him. Though he's still adjusting to his new job and is clearly not used to it yet, he seems genuinely happy. He's found his true purpose. It's the same as Bianca, now Professor Juniper's assistant. She's there to give you and Hugh your starter Pokémon. She may have given up on becoming a master trainer, but she's still helping out in a way that lets her continue to interact with Pokémon and learn more about them. It's doubly great that they're able to accompany you throughout the story. Sharon may have settled down in recent years, but he's still a noble and powerful soul, ready and willing to help you in any way he still can. Team Plasma have returned to wreak havoc once again, though their facade has long since been brought to light. They're no different these days than a gang of sky pirates. It seems as though Unova has mostly moved on from this perceived moral dilemma. It's strange, their presence feels pretty desperate, and as a result, the story template is far more standard. They openly steal Pokémon and commit acts of terrorism. The group feels as though it's in its death throes. The most interesting admin there, Colress, doesn't even seem to care one way or the other what happens to the organization he's part of. His fights with you feel more like a game he's playing to pass the time. You get the impression that although Getsis gave him his mission, he's basically doing whatever he wants. Most of the sages left Team Plasma during the post-game of the original, so it's basically just Getsis and the unhinged grunts that remained. That more hostile, violent approach ends up affecting your rival, Hugh. Now, I'm not going to pretend his dialogue is perfect. The game lays it on pretty thick that there's something up with his sister's purloin. Man, I wonder if something happened to it. He's only made it clear to me about 10 times. He's also going to let you know when he's really angry. I don't know, it's a little too much for me to handle sometimes. But honestly, when you learn more about what actually happened to this purloin, it's pretty damn sad. This Pokemon is completely unrecognizable come the end of the game. It's evolved into a Liepard, and Hugh has to simply accept that it's going to take a long time for a full recovery, if at all. It's quite rare that we see abuse or neglect towards Pokemon addressed, and it makes his story stand out. That Hugh is able to soldier on in spite of it all is admirable. He isn't meant to push you to become stronger, nor does he have a super meaningful character arc. He serves a much more minor role in illuminating how truly evil Team Plasma is. There's a particularly tough scene where Hugh has to reconcile that not everyone who joined Team Plasma 2 years ago are still bad people, and there might not even be anyone to seek revenge on. A lot of them left when N did, and the sycophants that remained make up the new organization. Hugh can't just point himself at all of Team Plasma and give them his ire, because it's more complicated than that. There are no easy answers. I see it said a lot that Black and White have better stories, while Black 2 and White 2 have the better gameplay. I suppose, in a vacuum, this is true, but it also feels like a fairly reductive way to treat each of them, that assumes this is a zero-sum game where one game has a good story, which means the other must have a bad one, and vice versa. While this story isn't as salient on its own, it's also doing stuff that only a sequel can. Characters are able to grow, to reflect on the events of the original, and to change. Without these games, we would never have gotten another confrontation between Getsis and N. Getsis has changed so little since the original. Some might argue he's become even more unhinged, even more spiteful, even more sadistic. N's journey was an enlightening one, and the pieces definitely seem to be lining up for him. It's immensely satisfying to watch N roast his abusive father after his plans are once again ruined by a child. While the game's script might not be as meaningful as the original's at face value, I think this is the true strength of it being a direct sequel. That it's able to feel new by simply switching up the way in which you explore the region. Black 2 and White 2 resemble Gen 2's return to Kanto, but with a far stronger effect. The first two gym leaders are Normal and Poison, and they reside in entirely new cities on the west end of the region. Returning gym leaders like Clay, Berg, and Elisa have had their teams shaken up. When you reach Mistralton City, they fly you straight to the new desert city, Lentimus, which spits you into Undella Town, a post-game exclusive city in the original, as you make your way to Opelucid City for the 7th gym battle against Drayden, no matter your version, and an 8th in the newly added Humilau City, with the new water gym leader Marlin standing before the Elite Four, which Iris now stands on top of, instead of Alder. My point in saying all of that is that a lot has changed in only 2 years, and it is incredibly satisfying to uncover that change. It makes a second trek through the region much less exhaustive, especially when you take note of the new regional dex, which has added a ton of older Pokémon. I believe this to be about as genius as the decision to exclude old Pokémon from the original, which might sound a little paradoxical at first, but allow me to explain. As a direct sequel, there's only so much that can be done to change the raw feel of what you're seeing. Sure, now there's a big dungeon in the Castelia City sewers, and the gym's been given a new look with new puzzles and a new team, but at the end of the day, it's still Castelia City, and it's still Berg, the bug-type gym leader. The biggest change that you're going to feel then is a sudden infusion of old Pokémon on top of all the Unovan mons that are already there. Now you get to make a much more diverse and varied team to take on the main adventure. It also makes it much easier for gym leaders to swap out Pokemon on their team. Elisa swaps out one of her Emolga for a Flaffy, Skyla replaces her Unpheasant with a Skarmory, pretty Chad-like swap if I do say so myself, and Drayden replaces Haxorus with Flygon. You could argue that a lot of these changes don't add much to the teams, and in some cases don't even make a lot of sense, such as Clay replacing his Palpitoad with a Sandslash, but what it does is give you and the gym leader more to work with. I don't think one approach is necessarily better than the other in this case. Black and White are better games for making the dex more restrictive, and Black 2 and White 2 benefit from a more expansive dex because they needed to stand out as direct sequels. I took advantage of this when making a team for Black 2. Gavin the Superior performed essentially the same role it did in the original game team, bulky grass type. Blaze the Chandelure is also a fan favorite of mine that slotted in pretty well with the rest of the team, with her Fire Ghost typing and massive special attack output. Other than those two, though, I was pretty excited to broaden my Unovan horizons, as it were. Laura the Lucario fit a fairly standard mixed attacker role with the Steel fighting type. I still think it's so cool that you're actually able to catch and use a Riolu for a while at the beginning of the game. Really let her fit in with everyone else. Vinea the Flygon, one of my favorites from Gen 3. Her Dragon Ground typing helped a lot for coverage and some good resistances. Baby Raikou the Jolteon is a Pokemon I haven't actually used in a very long time, probably because it was easily the best of the original trio of evolutions in battle, but I felt like it was finally time to adopt another speedy boy, and he did pretty much exactly what you'd expect him to. Volt Switch is an incredible new addition to the type as a whole, and he made great use of it. Finally, we have Chester the Walrein. I actually didn't like this mon much until I put it on my water monotype for Gen 3. After using it there, I kinda fell in love with this bulky water ice type and its versatility. Served a similar function to Superior, essentially, while also being my designated water type since HMs still exist somehow. Really cool team, by the way. The battle against Iris was a nail-biter. This is turning into a bit of a ramble, but since I already basically talked about the Gen 5 mythical Pokemon, there's another gift-like addition which is infinitely cooler in pretty much every way imaginable. In the original game, N would use Pokemon that were only obtainable in the area you fought him, after which he would release them. You'll see that his rival teams are pretty random, and he swaps the entire team out each time. This was a neat little detail in the original, which allowed N to be a competent Pokemon trainer without sacrificing his core character conflict. If you're playing Black 2 and White 2 and memory link with your completed Black and White save file, you'll be able to meet and catch the specific Pokemon that N used. They're a 1% encounter, but also they're N's fucking Pokemon. They even give you N's Zorua through the main story. Not only is it a guaranteed Zorua, so you don't need any event bullshit, it's also N's Zorua. You unlock various cutscenes that fill in the gaps between games. Did you ever wonder why the Striaton Elemental Trio never showed up at N's castle? Well, there's a cutscene you can view through Memory Link which shows that they didn't feel like they were strong enough to assist everyone, and vowed to split up and become stronger individually, rather than as a unit. Makes their appearance at the World Tournament later feel all the better. This Link feature is unfortunately a tad convoluted, but there's a lot of cool stuff packed in there. Instead of having Sharon or Bianca vaguely reference the player character from Black and White, now they'll actually use the name of your player character on your save data. The unlockable hard mode will give gym leaders an additional Pokemon, have them hold items occasionally, and raise their levels. It's unfortunate that accessing this feature is ridiculously dumb, requiring that you first beat Black 2, then communicate with someone that has White 2, which unlocks a key or something that unlocks the hard mode. I don't know. It's dumb. I emulated the game, so I didn't have to worry about it. Emulation's the future, baby! I don't see the Pokemon Company offering any alternatives, so fuck them. The fans are usually the ones that have to compile all this shit anyway. I mean, look at Cerebi, look at Bulbapedia, look at all these Pokemon fan sites dedicated to documenting each and every facet of Pokemon. The fans love these games. The franchise's legacy is being held on their backs. These videos wouldn't even be possible without community contributions. Wait a minute. Cerebi and Bulbapedia are websites, right? Surprise. It's actually a Squarespace sponsor spot. There's really no excuse to not have a website these days. Even I have one. If you're interested, I've partnered with Squarespace for this video to offer you a chance to make one. Be it for music, art, merchandise, whatever, Squarespace can accommodate your needs, I assure you. I use my Squarespace website as a hub for newly released videos, updates on future videos, and more to come as I further develop its features. Link in the description if you're interested. You can make anything you want after watching their easily digestible tutorials and sleek intuitive building tools. Trust me, if I can make a website, you can too. There are step-by-step guides on what to do first. You can pick from dozens of potential pre-made styles, or scrap it all and start from scratch. They have hundreds of fonts to choose from. You can make things transparent, add color to the background, make image or video files your background. You can blur those images. You can add a store page if you're looking to sell music, art, or other merchandise. You can basically do anything to personalize your site for any use that you want it to have. Seriously, if you're a musician, artist, graphic designer, whatever, I guarantee you Squarespace will be helpful to you. So if you're looking to get started using Squarespace, you can begin your free trial today at squarespace.com/KingK using the code KingK to get 10% off your first purchase. That's squarespace.com/KingK using the code KingK to get 10% off your first purchase. There's really no excuse not to have a website these days, so get started now with the easiest, most accessible tool. I still think Gen 5 is the best Pokemon has ever looked. Okay, it's the best mainline Pokemon has ever looked, which I'm sure is crazy to say right before the generation that would usher the main series into the third dimension. But hey, I don't say Gen 5 is the peak for no reason. I've always loved the look of this generation. The 3D stuff they were toying with in Gen 4 takes its next step here, and it's gorgeous. The bridges are all really extravagant, and the camera changes its angle depending on where you are. The camera in general does a lot of the heavy lifting, making the experience feel much more cinematic than Pokemon has ever felt before. I'm convinced it's part of the reason the stories in the Unova region land the way they do, because there's this epic undercurrent to your adventures there. This feeling that you're on a larger-than-life quest to see the Unovan sights. There are unique animations for every in-battle sprite, including enemy trainers and all of their Pokemon, and the quality of those sprites and the way they move are frankly ridiculous. The season system, paired with the time of day, can make one jog through a route or city completely different one month to the next. Honestly, even just little things like the over-the-top battle intros, the last Pokemon remaining theme that all the gym leaders get, there's this exciting energy to getting to run around in Unova. But who am I kidding? It would be a moot point without these two soundtracks, wouldn't it? Both of these soundtracks are certified bangers. A lot of fast-paced, electronic-y, techno-y beats. Gold and Silver were more adventurous. Ruby and Sapphire were more bombastic. Diamond and Pearl were pretty laid back. Every generation has a unique vibe, or sometimes even a prominent instrument used as a leitmotif. In keeping with the inspiration for the region, the sounds in Unova are larger than life. They're frantic, idealistic, fierce. You feel that in the evolution of N's battle theme. You get the feeling this guy is completely out of your reach. His headspace is so far beyond anyone else's, he's like an alien. Over the course of the game, you begin to understand him better. His weaknesses and his strengths, what gave him his unusual conviction. When you're both at the apex of the Pokemon world, the both of you have to come to an understanding. Only through a final bout will the both of you reach an answer. Ghetsis' theme, which comes right after, also feels quite foreign, perhaps even a little creepy. The mastermind steps out behind the curtain, and he's ready to greet you even if his plans are falling apart at the seams. So too does the song. Driftvale City is a bop and a half, perfect for a bustling shipyard that houses the American stereotype ground user. The Elite Four battle theme is suitably gritty and dark in a way that I adore. I'm trying to refrain from just dropping all the tracks I like, you get the point. What I'm trying to lead to here is Black 2 and White 2, specifically its approach to the soundtrack. Many of the city, route, and dungeon themes are the same. Though they've been given a very slight remix, the gym, trainer, and wild battle themes are so similar that they may as well be the same. Some of them, though, were remixed. The Team Plasma theme was always a good one, the perfect anthem for a group of maniacal radicals. The remix for the sequel really fits their new loud and proud MO, less of a sinister evil lurking in the shadows, and more of a holy shit there's a pirate ship shooting at the city. I love how the remix for Ghetsis being more chaotic represents his devolution into a madman. Even the little things, like every gym having a full-on remix of the regular gym theme, fit with a visual makeover, really helps freshen up the second journey. Of course, there are new tracks as well, but not quite as many. Iris's champion theme is certainly different, but I like what it's going for a lot. It has this little girl could destroy the world energy, and the fight certainly fits that mood. Hugh's battle theme is a standout too, though I think everyone else likes it a little more than I do. But of course, Colress. I am not exaggerating when I say that Colress's battle theme is one of the best in Pokémon. His battle theme is extraordinary. I listen to it often. Allow me one gripe, though. The fact that this theme only plays once, and the rest of your battles with him play trainer or world tournament music, is a sin. There's not even a pared down remix for his initial fights like for N, nor is there the beefed up Team Plasma remix. It's just the regular battle theme. I mean, you really only get to hear the souped up version of N once too, but it just feels like a missed opportunity to do something more here. Stuff like this just makes walking into a new city, dungeon, or fight all the more exciting. And with these games already making significant quality of life changes, like having infinite use TMs, and a hub where you can more quickly get a Pokemon ready for competitive play, I don't think it's a coincidence that this is the generation where competitive play really took off in a big way. Or at least, it's when I started seeing a lot more officially sanctioned tournaments and Wi-Fi battle videos. I have no doubt there existed competitive communities even since the first generation. Any game with multiplayer PvP will have those communities, but as far as when it really took off onto a grander stage, the introduction of Wi-Fi connection on the DS really paved the way for this format to become more accessible. Talking about competitive Pokemon is sorta like opening Pandora's box. There is so much to discuss here. I've already talked about the mechanics of making a team, getting their EVs and IVs in order, getting the right nature, etc. That stuff is still mostly the same, although it's been made quicker and more convenient than in previous games. I also don't really have the perspective to talk about what competitive Pokemon was like back in the day, because while I was around to notice, I also didn't really watch it very much. I watch Wolfie for that. So let's talk about something I'm actually equipped to discuss. Pokémon Showdown. Thank Arceus for this website. As you might imagine, each generation brings with it a litany of changes. The competitive meta can shift on a dime, depending on what each new game introduces. And since each new generation will always at least introduce new Pokemon, but usually also introduce new moves or a new mechanic or whatever, basically every generation has a distinct meta. And it's a little sad that you can never go back and experience even a simulacrum of what it may have been like back in the day. With Pokémon Showdown, you can battle in whichever generation you want, bound by its strengths and weaknesses. God help you if you play Gen 2 competitive, please go touch grass. I do think they've made it easier to create a team for Pokemon, but having any barrier to entry always sucks. So what I like to do a lot is test out a team I'm making in Showdown before committing to making any long-term changes to my actual team. After a battle or two, you can switch out your items, switch out your moves, adjust your EVs, whatever. And then, once you have everything perfect, you can make the team for real. It's both a tool that players can use and a historical document where you're able to see how the scene has changed and evolved. It's not exactly a perfect site in that regard, since each generational meta is currently playable, they've all evolved accordingly with the passing of time. But it's a tool that I desperately hope the Pokemon Company never nukes out of existence. As I said before, Pokemon fans carry parts of the franchise on their backs, and this is no different. Using Showdown, I've been able to understand and enjoy competitive battling during any time period I want. Love him or hate him, I think Smogon has done a remarkable job vetting the singles scene, at the very least. Although it does present a unique challenge. Smogon is not an official Pokemon entity. They make rules for Showdown. They don't make rules for the games. This is something I was confused about as a kid when I heard people throwing around terms like OU and Ubers, wondering what they even meant. Supposedly you couldn't use higher tier Pokemon in lower tier battles, but there has never been an in-game system to reinforce those decisions. In the games, you can basically use anything that isn't outright banned by the facilities you enter, usually just mythicals. The official competitive Pokemon standard is also doubles. This puts Smogon at odds with the Pokemon Company in certain respects because the way they run their show is only enforced on Pokemon Showdown, and I have very little doubt that a good chunk of people use Showdown instead of playing the games. However, the actual registered Showdown users are probably 0.1% of Pokemon players anyway, and I doubt it's realistically had any impact on the sales of the games. At least, that's what I tell myself every morning, hoping Showdown still exists. And I do think there's a value to Showdown that you will immediately lose when it's shut down, because again, they basically run singles. I consider the Weather Wars singles meta of Gen 5 to be a fascinating part of the generation as a whole, where there was an increased focus on weather, since in this gen, abilities like Drizzle and Drought set weather permanently, so you saw a lot of Pokemon like Politoed, since it gained Drizzle. I don't know, I'm growing increasingly impatient with the crowd of people that are only willing to support something if it's officially endorsed. Fact of the matter is, Pokemon is as powerful as it is for a lot of reasons, and the Pokemon Company, nay, any of these major companies, are not solely responsible for that. The sooner we all recognize that, the better.
In Pokemon Black 2 and Pokemon White 2, there are new areas to explore. And new gym leaders to battle. The new Pokemon Black version 2 and Pokemon White version 2. You can discover the new in 2.
A lot of the things I said in part 1 apply here. The dungeons and routes are large with lots to do and see, the journey itself is decently challenging, it's paced very well. There isn't much to comment on in that regard. The new desert area is pretty neat, though it's a bit small. The haunted house is a nice touch, the Castelia City sewers is a fantastic addition, and the fact that it leads to a patch of grass with a wild Eevee is just... I love when Eevee isn't this ultra rare gift Pokemon. I want to make an Eevee team in this game someday. Since I don't have much to really add, let's move instead to the post-game. The original's post-game is pretty decent. You get to collect a bunch of old Pokemon, explore the other half of Unova, fight Alder, lose to Cynthia. You also get to round up the sages and learn how they're all dealing with the Team Plasma fallout. A few of them renounce Team Plasma, a few of them show remorse. It's pretty great. Feels less like a story and more like a world when you get to see this much after the credits. Saving so many routes and cities for the post-game and loading them with old Pokemon, powerful TMs, and harder fights makes for a pretty decent post-game as far as I'm concerned. Black 2 and White 2 have a flat-out better post-game. Since you explore post-game cities in the main adventure, this time you save locations like Dragon Spiral Tower, Twist Mountain, and Isra City for the post-game. So it has the same general structure, but with its own original flair. You encounter Team Rocket as you're exploring your old home. You can battle a gauntlet of tough trainers in Black Tower or White Tree Hollow to get a shiny Dratini or Gibble respectively. You can even battle N in his castle, and upon defeating him, he will release his legendary and you can go catch it, which is just... it's shit like this that makes a sequel really special. You can also rebattle him every Friday, where he switches out his team based on what season it is, and uses the appropriate weather team to match. Rain team for spring, sun for summer, sand for autumn, and hail for winter. You can just do that every Friday at the fucking Ferris wheel. Ends team building now, it's great. It's remarkable to me because as much as the Black and White post-game was decent, especially compared to the nothing we get nowadays, there were several things that really bothered me about it. Black City and White Forest are version-exclusive post-game zones. In the original, you went to White Forest to catch new, rare Pokemon, and you went to Black City to buy evolution stones and other rare items. They also obviously have drastically different vibes, kinda like future versus past Opelucid City. You can guess which one fits me better as someone who loves the Soul series, mains a Dark Knight in Final Fantasy XIV, and considers Shadow their favorite Sonic character. It all started with you, I know it did. You're what made me so edgy, you fucking asshole. So yeah, I love Black City conceptually, and it's a damn shame that White Forest is blatantly better. You can actually get Pokemon there, there's no contest. The items you can eventually buy here are obtainable elsewhere, so the only thing you can really do is battle Pokemon. You could eventually buy heart scales, but only if you manage to wrangle the correct NPC from White Forest via Entralink, which is a local multiplayer feature where both cartridges have to interact. It's a huge pain in the ass these days, and there's pretty much no reason at all to even go to Black City. Not only do you need to own 2 DS systems and 2 different versions, you also need to stay on top of it, because if you wait too long, people will just leave. Why would this even be a feature? What exactly is the punishment here? Not playing the game literally every day? You basically just end up with a barren city that will probably become even more barren once you drop it like a hot rock. Which is why it's amazing to see that this whole Black and White City thing was overhauled in the sequels. What they lose in their distinction, they gain in a more coherent and less frustrating experience. Both cities have a battle tower mechanic, where you go into a big tower and fight a bunch of tough trainers. As I said before, the reward for completing this is not only a shiny Gibble or Dratini, but in the case of Black City, you also get more and more residents the further you progress. White Forest has kinda dropped the find Pokemon angle, but it has instead taken some of the rare items that were previously in Black City. Bam. Now, the aesthetic of the area is more of a concern than its mechanical identity. So picking the wrong version doesn't feel nearly as pronounced, and both games get to interact naturally, since they both have their strengths and weaknesses. Another gripe I have with the original post-game is that it feels like there's a scarcity of things to do and Pokemon to find. You can only catch the Unovan legendaries, and besides doing the championship again to fight Alder, your only real post-game battle hub was the Battle Subway, which is, you know, the battle tower that's in every game. Like, yeah, I think it's really cool that Cynthia is just hanging out in Undella Town ready to battle you, but it also sucks that none of the gym leaders have rematch fights, something I thought was starting to become a bit of a staple. So now, we have all of that stuff from the original, plus battling N, doing the new battle towers, catching the new legendaries, battling your rival in Colress again. They added an Achievement-esque system where you get little medals for doing certain tasks. There are medals for completing the Elite Four with different monotype teams, or even just with a single Pokemon, reaching the final floor of the Abyssal Ruins, finishing Pokestar Studios. Oh yeah, that's another thing. It isn't technically a post-game feature, but I usually save it until then anyway. Pokestar Studios is this movie set where you get to do battle with aliens and giant robots. You select moves in a more puzzle-like fashion rather than a straight-up duel, since you're aiming to make an entertaining movie. It's nothing huge, just another cool thing you can sink some time into if you're bored. That isn't to even mention that some Pokemon have hidden grottos where they'll have their hidden ability when caught, or Join Avenue, where you can build up an area of NPCs based on your in-game progress, and can even unlock shops where you can pay to increase EVs and buy a bunch of berries. There's so much to do and see, and if you've played the game before, there's one more feature I have yet to talk about. A feature that is so beloved by pretty much everyone, and is one of the primary reasons these sequels rank so highly for people. Before we talk about the World Tournament proper, let me discuss the team I've built for it. This facility is where the best Pokemon trainers in the world come to compete, so I decided I needed to craft a team that I'd feel comfortable using as a champion. And, as Karen expertly said so long ago, just try to win with your favorites. So, I did just that. Gavin the Superior. He's evolved since defeating Iris, and has now achieved his perfect form. A light clay dual screen synthesis Giga Drain set, because Superior still does not get contrary in this game. Even without it though, Gavin is a master of the long game. He can stall out pretty much anything, especially if you give him Giga Drain. A true leech and a proper annoyance for anyone to contend with. Deluxray the Luxray. Deluxray runs Flame Orb and Guts with Crunch, Facade, Wild Charge, and Ice Fang. Basically, he can get in and wreck some shit, especially if he has a good opportunity to use Guts boosted Facade. Ice Fang is great for some of the Dragon users, though you do kinda have to hope he survives long enough to get them off. Usually though, if he hits the opponent, they're going to die, or be close to it. Xenos the Absol. Xenos is probably the weakest link of this team, but there is no way in hell I'm making a champion team without my favorite Pokemon. I tried my best here. Super Luck to raise crit chance, Salac Berry to raise speed at low health, and a moveset of Baton Pass, Night Slash, Swords Dance, and Psycho Cut. The idea here was to make it so that it would likely outspeed whatever it's fighting if it gets to eat its Salac Berry, and then it can Baton Pass out if it manages to get a Swords Dance or two off. Great idea, but more often than not, it just kinda died. I experimented with a Focus Sash set for a while before kinda just giving up. I still love you, Absol. I just wish your speed wasn't base 75. Oh well, 'tis merely a test of his reflexes. Eggle the Empoleon. Eggle is another bulky set. His steel typing, mixed with his naturally good bulk, defensive EVs, and a rocky helmet for good measure. No sword will cut deep enough. His moves are Scald, Flash Cannon, Stealth Rock, and Toxic. Scald is a fantastic move that has a decent chance of burning the opposing Pokemon, cutting their attack in half. Stealth Rock and Toxic are pretty self-explanatory, and Flash Cannon is there for the stab coverage, plus the occasional special defense drop. Eggle was one of my best Pokemon, able to soak up most heavy-hitting attacks and resist the Dragon type, which is one of my team's more prominent weaknesses. Doesn't help that the Dragon type teams are naturally much harder than most of the other types. Blaze the Chandelure. Blaze was created for one purpose and one purpose only, to hit stuff really hard with special attacks. Calm Mind, Hex, Psychic, Flamethrower with a Life Orb, giving her Flame Body for the occasional clutch burn. Admittedly, her 80 base speed can sometimes be extremely frustrating, but more often than not, she just eviscerates whatever she's up against. The Queen, in more ways than one. And now, a returning favorite, a reliable Pokemon that has smashed up more than one post-game gauntlet, an iconic Pokemon which towers above all the rest, Fuck Lance returns for one more bout as part of my champion team. I don't think I need to explain to you why Fuck Lance is busted, especially if you watched the previous videos. I didn't even really change anything. Intimidate, Choice Band, Outrage, Stone Edge, Aerial Ace, and Brick Break. It hits stuff like a truck, and for the first time ever, it can even take advantage of its nickname. It is worth noting, I think Gen 5 prohibits swear words and nicknames or something, so like, I hacked it in. We have one last hurrah with Fuck Lance, and then we'll move on. Alright, so that's the team I'm rolling with. The Pokemon World Tournament is better than the Battle Frontier. Just ruminate on that a little bit. This is an event hosted below Driftvale City. You first visit it in the main story, as Clay introduces you to how the brackets work and you fight Colress. It's essentially like the Battle Dome, without all the extra mechanics. You can enter a single, double, triple, or rotation battle, giving triple and rotation battles especially much more prominence overall. While it isn't quite as cool as the Battle Factory, there is an option to do this using the rental mode, where you're given random Pokemon, inheriting its spirit. You also get a new mode called a Mix Tournament, where you swap one of your Pokemon with one of your opponent's Pokemon. You get to choose after they do, so it's not just a game of luck. It's a pretty cool shakeup on the traditional format, and you can even run into Bianca sometimes if you're lucky. This alone is more than enough to keep players occupied for quite a while, but we honestly haven't even scratched the surface. After beating the game, you unlock the Unova Leaders bracket. The attendants, as you'd probably guess, are the Unova Gym Leaders. All of them, including the ones that weren't in this game, like Bryson, Lenora, and the Elemental Trio. You get a set of them at random, and you fight 3 of them per entry. As with most post-game battle facilities, these teams will have a competitive-ready Pokemon. Of course, they're gym leaders, so there's only so much they can do to overcome their weaknesses, but I think they have some pretty damn awesome monotype teams anyway. Sharon's team is pretty brutal. The normal typing gives him quite a bit of coverage, as well as access to many heavy hitters like Bouffalant and Zangoose. Stoutland, Cinccino, and Lopunny offer a lot of coverage in the form of rock, bug, grass, electric, dark, fighting, and ice. He even reps a cast form, though it usually doesn't get to do very much since he doesn't have a weather team. Props for the attempt though. Every single one of them carry appropriate items too. A lot of berries that raise specific stats at low health, and type gems which increase the base power of whatever move you're using a single time. It's funny because you'd think Sharon and Lenora would be painfully similar, but they're actually completely distinct. She uses a Clefable with a Steel Gem, packing Meteor Mash, Cosmic Power, Thunder Punch, and Wish. Her signature Annoyance makes its return, and she actually, unironically, genuinely puts a Dunsparce on her team. It is admittedly weird that Dunsparce could have either Serene Grace or Runaway. I would honestly prefer these teams having locked abilities to make them more deadly. Still though, pretty cool to see a Coil, Roost, Glare, and Rock Slide Dunsparce with Serene Grace potentially in the back pocket. I think it's the most interesting with early game gym leaders. You get to see this massive glow up for their teams. It's fun to fight them, yeah, but the reason I love gym leader rematches is because it makes them feel like the master trainers that they're supposed to be. I'm glad they reincorporated the gym leader rematches into these sequels. When you don't get to see these master teams, it's kind of hard to imagine them doing very much when they come in at the end of the originals and help you out. And the game seemingly agrees with me, since Memory Link confirms it. So yeah, you get entirely new competitive level teams for every single Unovan gym leader from both games. That's pretty damn cool on its own. Seeing as you can enter this tournament in single, double, triple, rotation, rental, and mix, yeah, that'll keep you occupied for a good bit. But it's not over. When you finally beat the Unova Leaders bracket, you unlock the Kanto Leaders bracket, then the Johto Leaders, then the Hoenn Leaders, then the Sinnoh Leaders. You heard me correctly. This fucking video game has every single gym leader across the entire series, including Juan and Janine. Think about that. Every single gym leader that has ever existed is here. All of them have competitive level monotype teams, and the gym leader themes get a unique remix for every region. You thought that Cynthia was the only one getting a remix? No, 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 you get more. More bangers, please. I don't think I have the proper words to untangle why this is the coolest post-game feature we've ever had. Sure, the Battle Frontier had at least 5 facilities in past games, each with their own unique gimmicks and frontier brains. Some of those were really cool, but I think it would be helpful to remember that a lot of them, especially in Emerald, were pretty frustrating and kinda redundant. While the facilities were better in Platinum, I also wouldn't say any one of them stood head and shoulders above the rest, except for maybe the Battle Factory, which is in part here, by the way, just a reminder. It also didn't help that in most of these facilities, the streak system meant that you had to win like 40-some battles in a row sometimes, and most of those early trainers are scaled lower, so their teams aren't nearly as threatening as the Frontier brains. Well, in this case, every single fucking person you battle is a Frontier brain, and not only that, they're gym leaders from previous games. Granted, Heart Gold and Soul Silver offered these same kinds of rematches for Kanto and Johto, and Platinum did it for Sinnoh, so some of these teams look a little similar. However, Hoenn's teams are mostly new, since the rematch system in that game was a little strange, and 2 whole generations worth of Pokemon were added for them to play around with. But it's kind of a moot point anyway, since all of them benefit from the new Pokemon moves and items added in Gen 5. Let me run through some of my favorite new teams. Blaine isn't messing around this time. He's got a Life Orb Charizard, a Choice Scarf Magmortar, Flame Orb Rotom Heat. It isn't phenomenal or anything, but it's enough that he's at least decently threatening, depending on what team you bring. And that isn't something Blaine has ever been able to say for himself. Giovanni appears in his Sunday best, sporting many of his iconic members from back in the day. His team is less important than the fact that he's here at all. I actually didn't think they'd even want to include him, because I mean, he's Giovanni, ex-leader of Team Rocket. I don't know who co-signs some of these contestants, but I'm not complaining. It's pretty damn cool that he's here. My man Bugsy feels like a Giga Chad now. He rocks Okaberry Scizor, Kobaberry Heracross, Chartyberry Yanmega. He's got Shuckle and Fortress on the defensive and Pinsir to round out the team. It's not exceptional or anything. Bug is never going to be, but it's a competent team full of bug Pokemon that I really respect and love. Morty is surprisingly annoying. His signature Pokemon, the one he leads with every single time you battle him, is a Gengar that has Shadow Ball, Focus Blast, Dark Pulse, and Hypnosis. Gonna key in on Hypnosis there. Other moves split across his Pokemon include Perish Song, Pain Split, Curse, Will-O-Wisp, Sucker Punch, Recover, Confuse Ray, and Foul Play. Morty was always a challenge, and I started sweating buckets whenever he was one of the leaders in the bracket. Winona has always been one of my favorite gym leaders. It felt like she really understood her typing and took advantage of its wide type coverage. So many Pokemon have flying as their secondary type, and Winona utilizes that to great effect. Altaria, Pelipper, Swellow, Skarmory, Tropius, and Honchkrow. Not a single shared primary type. Her fights were similarly brutal, depending on the 3 that she decided to use for singles, and that went doubly so if I decided not to pack Deluxe Ray or fuck Lance, because then I just had very few options against her beefy Altaria with Cotton Guard, Roost, Sing, and Dream Eater. She is a force to be reckoned with, and she has one of the coolest monotypes of all time. Tate and Liza kinda fascinate me. Tate uses Solrock and Liza uses Lunatone. But aside from that, their teams are identical. Xatu, Chimecho, Grumpig, Claydol, and a 3rd evolution of Ralts. However, the sets they use are different. Most of Tate's Pokemon, for instance, use Trick Room, and so that's what his team is primarily built around. Liza has a lot more Calm Minds and Cosmic Powers, so she'd rather set up and sweep. Then there are the individual differences. Tate's Chimecho runs Hypnosis, Dream Eater, Energy Ball, and Trick Room, assumedly to synergize with the Rest Sleep Talk Grumpig that he also has. Liza's Chimecho runs Light Screen, Psychic, Yawn, and Reflect, offering more defensive utility, helping the Grumpig in other ways, which instead has Psyshock, Focus Blast, Power Gem, and Calm Mind. Tate runs Gallade for physical coverage, and Liza turns Claydol into a physical attacker, so her team isn't entirely special. She also uses Gardevoir, the opposite evolution. It's just a cool idea to split the twins up like this. Maylene is a monster. Pure Power Medicham with Bullet Punch, Zen Headbutt, Brick Break, and Bulk Up. Lucario with Cross Chop, Bone Rush, Extreme Speed, and Swords Dance. Infernape with Close Combat, Mach Punch, Fire Punch, and Bulk Up. Like, sure, you could just bring a physical wall or something, since she doesn't have any special coverage, but man, if you don't have an immediate answer to her Pokemon, she will wreck your shit in. Pretty much every team here is cool. They get a little weaker when they share a type with another gym leader. especially the rock type. Brock, Roxanne, and Rourke share many of the same Pokemon, and the rock type in general just isn't very diverse at this point, so they can be a little bland and pretty easy to take down. For the most part though, these brackets are a blast, and once you complete them all, you gain access to a bracket where every single leader from every region can participate. And you can enter it in singles, doubles, triple, rotation, rental, and mix. Just think about how much content this actually is. You can go in with any team you want, meaning you make a bunch of teams for what is essentially Gym Leader Greatest Hits. No matter what team you build, you're going to struggle and triumph against different people. You will forge new adversaries and retire old ones. Not only that, you can enter with a rental team, and you can actually use one of their Pokemon. You can use a Gym Leader's Pokemon. This is so much that you can do, and it's only one small part of the post-game. And I'm not even done! You thought I was done, didn't you? If you win the All Gym Leaders bracket 10 times in a row, you unlock the champions. Every champion! I can use Fuck Lance to fight Lance, and he actually has a good team now. You can fight Blue and Steven and Cynthia, you can fight Red. Red shows up and he puts the ellipses down. Oh, this is a lot. As much as I love playing the main story, seeing how everything's changed, I think my favorite part of it all is right here. This mode they created with almost limitless replay value. I unfortunately skipped out on these games at release, so my first playthrough was a lot more recent than the other games. But I have a feeling that if I had played this at launch, it would be my most played Pokemon to date just because of how fun it is. They crammed so much into these sequels, and it's sort of bittersweet. Generation 5 is the peak. It's the moment in time where I considered Pokemon in its bag. Across these two games, we get an enthralling tale filled with compelling heroes and villains who go through meaningful arcs, grappling with their purpose in life. We get a region full of diverse individuals trying to get along despite their differences. We get the most new Pokemon we have ever gotten. We get the best post-game to grace the franchise with meaningful story content, solo challenges, and multiplayer components. We got a stunning visual showcase for the DS, a game that still stands as an absolute triumph of sprite work. We got a banger of a soundtrack full of original and remixed tunes. When I think Pokemon, I think Unova, the most ambitious, passionate, and creative region yet. In my opinion, mainline Pokemon has struggled since these two games, and in retrospect, it marked the beginning of a turning point for the franchise going forward. It cast a shadow over it that has still yet to dissipate. This generation is an absolute triumph, and I sincerely hope this franchise will once again reach those same heights.